Welcome back to the potting shed. Today I've got this beautiful Bromeliad to talk to you about. This is the stunning Aechmea Fasciata Primera, or the urn plant as it is often called. So today I'm going to give you a bit of a species guide and a care guide for this plant, as there are some quite specific care requirements for this plant. But the good news is it's actually a relatively easy plant to look after, and I would definitely put it on the more easy to care for scale of things. And we'll also touch on repotting and propagation, so we'll get a whole Aechmea Fasciata species spotlight for you today. So let's get started. You can see why they're such popular houseplants, can't you? Look at the patination on these leaves. It's almost like snow on the leaves. It's absolutely beautiful, and every one is unique. And obviously it's hard to miss this fantastic pink flower spike coming out there. It's not actually the flower, this is the bracts or the modified leaves of the flower around the edges. And if you look into the center there will be some tiny little purple flowers down in there. So this houseplant comes from the rainforests of South America, where it's hot and humid, and this bromeliad, like all bromeliads, is an epiphyte, which means it actually clings on to other trees and grows on trees up in the canopy, and it doesn't act like a normal plant. Although it's planted in soil, it doesn't take up nutrients and moisture from the roots like normal plants do. It actually gets nutrients from the leaves, and the reason why it's called an urn plant is down in the center here, it's almost like a funnel, and so when it rains in nature, the water droplets would run down into the center of the plant there, and that's how it takes on moisture, through the little urn or reservoir in the center of the plant, hence its name. So it's quite an interesting one, but obviously with the watering you have to get one or two things right. Firstly, obviously, if you take it home and just put water in the soil as normal, it's not quite going to do it for this particular plant. It will need a little bit of water down here, but in the winter water it sparingly, okay? Because if you just put too much water down in the center, it's not going to take it or use it, because it won't be growing very much. That water will just then go stagnant, and you could rot out the center of the plant. So if it's the winter where you are, put a little bit in, and after a few days time carefully tip it up, and if there is any excess water you can get rid of that water out of there to stop it sitting there and stagnating. Any water in there you want to be fresh, ideally. And if you're from a hard water area, if your tap water is a little bit hard, then I would suggest you use rainwater, or at least reverse osmosis water, some sort of deionized filtered water, just to take out the heavy metals, because this one's going to be a little bit more susceptible to that sort of water. You can every now and again put some water down here in the soil, as you would do normally, but it doesn't need very much at all, so be careful not to overwater it. Really, the roots are there just to hold the plant into wherever it's living, but just a little bit of water every now and again is more than enough, to be honest with you. Now, in terms of light, they do like a bright position ideally, although they can tolerate slightly lower levels of light. If you've got a spot slightly further back from a window, it's probably going to be okay. The only thing they don't tolerate is too much direct harsh sunlight. So if you've got a windowsill or a window with the south facing sun beaming in, you're going to scorch these beautiful leaves. So you need to keep it out of the direct sun, but any sort of bright indirect light is going to be perfect for this plant. They're quite tolerant in terms of temperature as well, so they will tolerate a cooler room. I've got this in my kitchen at the moment, and it's winter here in the UK, and it's dropping down to probably 15 degrees Celsius in the kitchen overnight, and it seems perfectly happy there. And the other bromeliads I've had over the years seem perfectly tolerant at those sort of temperatures. So although it comes from a humid tropical climate, these do seem quite tolerant, which is good. So we've gone over watering, we've talked about light, and in terms of feeding they need very little, and because of the type of plant being an epiphyte, it won't take on any of the nutrients from the water. It will take on nutrients from the leaves. So if you do want to give it any sort of feed, then a foliar spray is the one that you need, like you would get for an orchid or something like that. That's also an epiphyte. So give it a spray onto the leaves rather than in a liquid form. You certainly don't want to put diluted sort of houseplant feed down into the urn, because the sort of salts in the feed are not going to help it at all down in there. It's just going to sit there and stagnate. So yeah, if you do want to give it some helping hand, then on the leaves. But to be honest with you, because the life cycle of this type of bromeliad, it grows these amazing leaves, this amazing flower spike. When this finishes flowering, which is probably about 3 months, something like that, the flowers do last a long time, but once this goes, the life cycle is over. It won't reflower, and what you'll often find is this mother plant will die back. It is finished. But don't worry too much, because from the base you will often find, when it gets to that stage, other smaller plants or pups growing from the base. Okay, so you can leave it in the pot here and maybe cut back the flower spike if that's all gone all brown and died back, but you can leave it and let the pups grow in the pot, and then you can have a much bigger plant with new leaves, and you may well be able to get those pups to maturity, at which point they may well flower for you. Now, I have read on the old interwebs that it can take years for a mature plant to flower, but I actually have a neighbour with one of these plants, and she has managed to get the pups to flower. So I'll do another video on that particular one. So it is possible, and she's only had that plant for about 18 months. So I don't know the validity. Maybe it is different species have longer flowering times, quite possibly, but this particular one, the Aechmea Fasciata, seems to certainly have a better chance of reflowering. So definitely worth having, and they do look fantastic when they are like this. And I'll certainly keep hold of this one, and maybe I'll do some update videos about whether we can get the pups to flower. There aren't any offsets on this plant at all. I think it is relatively fresh, so I think we've got probably at least 2 or 3 months of enjoying the plant like this before we even get to the point where the flower is over, and we might still then see some pups forming. So I'll let you know how we get on with that on another video. But in terms of a care guide, you know, they are very simple to look after. Just a little bit of water through the winter, a little bit more in the summer, but really they don't need too much, because they are used to sort of being up in the canopy and taking what they can get, type of thing. So if you give them a little bit, is better than too much. But that's pretty much it for this plant. Apart from the watering, which is obviously slightly different, they are fairly simple to look after. They will tolerate a broad range of conditions, even humidity. Yes, they come from a humid environment, but they seem to tolerate the warmer, the drier, environments of a centrally heated house. For instance, this one has been in my house over winter with the central heating. It doesn't seem to affect it at all. And the other Aechmea Fasciata plants I've seen in other people's houses over winter, quite tolerant, and they will put up with the colder temperatures and even the drier environments of a centrally heated house. So if you are someone who is new to growing house plants, maybe less experienced, or maybe just particularly skilled at killing house plants, then this is certainly one I would recommend. So I'll keep you updated with this one. Hopefully you found it helpful. Please give it a thumbs up if you have. I really would appreciate that, and subscribe for more houseplant related videos coming along very soon. Bye for now.